Pak Siman, Pak Aziz, and Pak Bernard, please just come join me. And yes. One of the things we know is that the energy transition is a huge business opportunity. $2.1 trillion was invested in 2024 in the energy transition. We're about to come out with a new number for last year, but we know it'll be a significant number. So despite some of the press around the energy transition, it is rolling forward. So the transition is happening. And Indonesia will play a large part in it. Indonesia has some great attributes. As was mentioned, we produced an Indonesian fact book, actually. I brought along my copy just to prepare myself. It's sort of 80, 90 pages of things you didn't know about Indonesia, including things like on the resource side, number 1 in nickel, number 3 in cobalt, number 4 in bauxite in terms of resources, number 2 in terms of geothermal on a global basis. Number 2, in terms of nature-based resources for nature-based solutions, and 2 out of the top 5 carbon credit-generating projects are all in Indonesia. So it does have some huge assets. Also on the NDC now, there is a peak emission target by 2030. So again, that's new, that's progress. So that means hopefully from 2030 onwards, emissions in the country will be heading down, which really does add emphasis behind the energy transition. And what we've seen in other countries is once you have a government commitment, that really does help people invest and be on side. So first off, what I just wanted to do was ask all of our panelists, I'll start with you, Pak Siman, around how do you think about, what are the things that you think about when you think about the energy transition? What are front of mind in terms of the goals and the opportunities for Pertamina?
Thank you, John. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back here. It's one of the most anticipated event of the year. And also I'm waiting for the Indonesian night tonight. So that was one of my purpose coming here. Okay, gentlemen, as Pertamina, as the Indonesian energy company, national energy company, we always aligned our strategy with the Astacita from our president, Mr. Prabowo Subianto, especially point number 2 and number 5. Number 2 is the self-sufficient in energy, and number 5 is the downstreaming of the energy. Talking about energy transition, I have to start with what we really experience in Indonesia. We know one of the challenges faced by the developing economies is how to provide an affordable source of energy. So before talking about energy transition, I must say first that Indonesia was once the producer of oil and gas and the net exporter. But since 20 years ago, Indonesia became a net importer of oil. That's why the first that we would like to prioritize is still the energy security. So before talking about the energy transition, we need to secure, because Pertamina, as Indonesia's state-owned national oil company, we have a mandate to provide and also for the supply of energy nationwide, even reach the remote areas. So the first concern of us is to provide the energy for our people affordable. We know that with the trilemma energy, the security, availability or affordability, and then sustainability. So Pertamina always align our strategy with the government Astachita. So we also have our strategy in Pertamina. We say it's a dual growth strategy, John. So dual growth is the first one is maximizing our legacy business. Maximizing our legacy business. One of them is we still need to increase our production in the upstream. We still need to increase our production. And there's still a lot of potential because around 128 basins in Indonesia, there's still around 28 basins that operated. So there's still a lot of potentials. And also we need to, in the legacy business, we need to increase the flexibility of our refineries, and also from our gas infrastructure, and etc. But on the other hand, we also go to the low carbon businesses. So this is the dual growth strategy. The low carbon businesses, one of them is ecosystem, creating the ecosystem for biofuels. We have been successful with the B40 biodiesel mandate. Now we are going to start with the bioethanol. And from bioethanol, there are a lot of several products. We also aiming for sustainable efficient fuel, and also how to increase our geothermal capacities. As you mentioned before, we have potential of now the second largest in the world. Now Indonesia capacity of geothermal around 2.7 gigawatt, the second after US. And Pertamina contributes around 227 megawatt of the total. But we have the program for the next 5 years to increase around 1 until 1.5 gigawatt. Then we aim to become the first world producer of geothermal. So, John, this dual growth with the legacy business in oil and gas, because we have to say that we still heavily depend on fossil, but on the other hand, we continue to go and increase the capacity of our low carbon businesses. Thank you, John.
Thank you. And you're sort of open-minded and tuned in to the costs of different technologies, right? Because a lot of these sort of cleaner technologies are becoming cheaper and cheaper, which sort of changes the equation sort of over time. So you're monitoring that and sort of open to those cheaper, cleaner technologies as and when they make sense. Is that right?
Yes.
So that fits with your dual track.
Yeah, technology also important. We know if one of the trade-offs we have now is between the affordability versus the green premium. We know that the green energy is still have higher price compared to the fossil. That's why sometimes. That's why we need to have this more technology, and also several ways to look for that. One of them is how we need to look for like cost sharing outside of our state budget, and also Pertamina in this case, how to have like this cross subsidy, because we also have our product non-PSO maybe, and also from our upstream we need to also have more in our upstream. So when we have this profits and also cash flows from upstream, then we can also invest to increase the capacity of our energy transition and low carbon businesses.
Right. Okay, thank you. And there will be trade-offs anyway around upstream and how much you can grow versus some of the downstream being competitive. Okay, thank you very much. Pak Aziz, for I suppose for Indika, how do you think about the energy transition? What's front of mind for you? How do you think about what that means for your business?
First of all, thanks for having me here, John. The transition in Indika Energy, it means moving in one set of asset to the others. whereas the existing asset primarily are on higher sort of carbon sectors and switching to lower carbon sectors. And in the transition, I think I'm with Pak Simon when he said earlier about energy security, right? When in the corporate side, Indika Energy, when we are doing our transition, the security and the business resilience has come into the first priority, right? That's number one. And number two, any transition has to make sense economically and financially. So when you said earlier that technology gets cheaper and cheaper, right? So any transition will get more sort of economical and economical. So from that perspective, the energy transition has to strengthen the energy security and the business resilience, right? So in our case, in the Indika case, the energy transition has to strengthen our sort of business platform to grow further and to grow more sustainably. And any transition has to also financially make sense.
Right. And are you looking at the opportunities of onshoring, in terms of manufacturing and those kinds of things for, using overseas components that are clean and cheap, but building sort of onshore manufacturing type? Is that part of your thinking?
Yeah, in our case, the focus now is really a more sustainable sectors with sustainable sort of value supply chain. Right, so in the case of electric vehicle, for example, right, once as and when the volume makes sense, right, we are exploring the possibility of onshoring the production in domestically, right? But again, the volume has to make sense, right?
Right. So again, in terms of self-sufficiency, it's okay to import, but the more you can do sort of in country, if you like, is boosts up the sort of increases self-sufficiency.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. And Bernard, same. RGE, how do you think about the energy transition and your businesses and the opportunities for it and managing that transition?
Yeah. Firstly, John, thank you for inviting us, RGE, to participate on today's dialogues. So when talking about energy transition, I think we should see this as an opportunity, but at the end have to be profitability. RGE is quite actively entering the energy transition applied to all our business groups. As informed to you all that RGE, basically we have 3 pillars. We have a fiber base called pulp and papers. We have a agri base mainly from palm base, and now in the energy sector. So basically regarding energy transition, most of this industry actually already go into the renewable energies. For example, one of our pulp and papers in Rio is currently 86% is using renewable energy from biomass, where we targeted at least by 2030 we can achieve 90%. And one of the example also, if there's some clean electricity available in the grids, one of the example we have is our LNG plant in Canada that they supported by electricity from hydro. So that's one of the opportunity that you can tap in actually for that. And then by that you can say that this is once the construction finalized, it can be set up as a net zero LNG plant, because all the energy came from hydroelectricity supply from power grid that available on that. But at the end, the commitment is always come to us. Previously, when we're doing the businesses, we're talking about how we're doing the business sustainably. But now, actually, we're thinking about why don't we invest in the sustainable business? For example, entering the renewable business that not only to supporting our business, but also to supporting the governments, also to take a look from the other markets, including export and stuff. So that kind of business, as long as the opportunity is there, but still profitability to the business, why not? Definitely have to go for that.
Right. And are you thinking about SAF and the aviation market?
Yes, we are actually thinking, and then we are also thinking also for the Asia market. Currently, for RG, we have a partner together with WEF in Spain. The SAF is being constructed because the European blending mandate is been set up. But if in the region in Southeast Asia, for example, like Indonesia, or we know that Singapore is also already apply 1% starting this year 2036. For example, if Indonesia combined with Malaysia and then also with Singapore, and then the government introduce this blending mandate, maybe set up the roadmap first, by which year that this is going to be implemented, I believe everyone will go into this because there's an opportunity for that. And for Indonesia itself, the feedstock of this SAF actually is available in Indonesia.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that seems like that's definitely an opportunity. The
Yes.
demand is very, very clear, right? It's really the supply that's tough. And Pasimon, it talked a lot about sort of upstream, and but are you also looking at things like hydrogen, so other clean molecules and CCS, other technologies for decarbonization? How do you? They're earlier stage technologies, obviously not in the money yet. But are you looking at those and investing in those?
We have several pilot projects that has been done maybe two months ago. The first one is the hydrogen from our geothermal. So that's the first pilot for the green hydrogen produced from one of our field. And also for the CCS, we have studied now around 11 locations. And also, we already put the roadmap from 2023 to 2030. There would be the early stages of our program, and 30 to 2040, scaling up, and also the next follow up later. So, once again, when we are also doing our best in upstream, we goes into the low carbon businesses, CCS, hydrogen, and also we have pledged to reduce our methane because we have targeted 2030 for the zero routine flare 2030, and also 2030 the reduction methane reduction the emission around 40%. And talking about SAF, last year, July, we already successful on our joy flight with Pelita Air, the airline from Pertamina, with 3.5% of SAF. And I was also joined the joy flight at the time after the inauguration. The other passengers have no idea what's going on. But we goes with used cooking oil. And then when I went on board, the other passengers coming, "Sir, is it true that we fly with used cooking oil? Is it safe?" And so we need to educate more because, of course, it's very safe, and we have this technology, and we produce this from our refinery. So that's not an issue. So we need also to scale up. So in terms of CCS, we actually have this Sunda Asri Basin that have the capacity of storage quite big, but we need to look for another partner because there's development in this endeavor. Our partner chooses to focus on the other area, other project. That's why we need to go forward. And Singapore is one of our customer for this Sunda Asri Basin for the storage of CO2.
Great. And do you think you get enough support from the government for these new technologies, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, the government now, President Prabowo Subianto mentioned several times on every occasion that we need to simplify all the procedures. We need to, cut the long tail bureaucrat. So what we would like to do here is to have more collaboration between all the players, industry players, and also government in this case. And we feel big support from the government to make it happen.
Okay, because you need off-takers as well for this, right? You need a full sort of supply chain to buy into it. So, okay, that's great. And then another sort of government policy-related question around carbon markets. Pak Bernard, maybe you can. How do you think about carbon markets and how they may play into your business? Are they a sort of small, medium, large opportunity for you?
I think for carbon market, at the end, nature and carbon have to sit together. We cannot replace. And then a lot of opportunity from the carbon markets. I think a lot of companies now is already go into that. But at the end, whether availability of the buyers and things, especially from the overseas, is something that you need to tap in. We know that in the previous years, I think there's some limitations in terms of talking about the carbon markets, how the acknowledgement from both sides, from the voluntary base and also from the NDC of the carbon itself. But once is connected and is settled, I think the opportunity is huge for Indonesia to be played as a key role for this.
And do you think, as well as international buyers, do you think, how would you create a domestic market? Do you think that would need compliance sort of in country, or do you think there's an opportunity to sort of build more of an appetite within Indonesia as well as internationally?
I think in Indonesia today the carbon market is run, but mainly now is between the SOEs also that have been have a transaction in the exchange. But how to expand more, not only limited to the one that needed and the one that can produce for that.
Okay, thank you. And Pak Aziz, similar question in terms of how does carbon markets factor into your business thinking as an opportunity?
Oh yeah, we have started a conservation project, okay, right? Together in the development. With the development of our sort of mining area. And that's just for what we can call internal sort of compensation, internal offset. Okay. Right? When you talk about the voluntary carbon market or even compliance carbon market, what I think as we need to have a sufficient incentive and disincentive, right, for us to be able to price the carbon, because otherwise, why bother to have a certificate, right, with a price, if there is no penalty, there is no disincentive not to do so. So carbon market certainly has a big potentials in Indonesia, where we sequester a lot of potentials, right? But again, yes, the regulation, the legislation are required to do so, but the fiscal or the economic incentive and disincentives need to be there for anyone to make the decision whether to go to buy a carbon or not to buy, basically.
Right. I mean, I think we've seen internationally, voluntary carbon markets have always been tough. If it's a sort of nice to have, and it's sort of, one phrase is sort of pre-compliance, because when it becomes compliance, then okay, now you have a market, now you have a price, now you have scaling, but as yet on the voluntary carbon markets, we've really not seen that in anywhere actually. So we'll see. I know that the European Union is expanding the scope of its carbon market, and that's been a sort of it's taken a long time, but it's been a good part of the energy transition. So again, maybe that's something in Indonesia that will be taken up. Pastor Simon, I just wanted to ask about sort of international relations, and obviously there's geopolitically the world has changed in the last 12 months. I suppose, how do you think, outside the goal of sort of self-sufficiency, if you like, sort of doing as much as you can in country, how do you think about different countries and different partnerships that you could have? How does that play into your thinking?
John, once again, we still have to have very good cooperation with other countries, because we still need to import crude or products from other country. So to get more support, we also focus on applying this ESG on this of all our operations. That's why I would like to say that Pertamina, we have to be a company environmentally responsible, social responsible, environmentally friendly, socially responsible, and good governance. That's why we also look for cooperation now with this geopolitical condition. Thanks for Indonesians' positions that we are not aligned, so we still have very close relationship with other countries.
Right.
That's why, and we also need support. And the thing here is how long that we will get the support from the other if we are not rely on our own resources. Okay. That's why I would like to once again say that we have to look for one of the, the advantage that we have, the strategic advantage of Indonesia have now is our biodiversity. That's why we need to increase our biofuel program. We need to be more sufficient with our own resources. And once again, we would like to have very good relationship and cooperation with other countries in terms of technology and in terms of investment and other global that we have support. And Pertamina, once again, with the government support, have to look for ways, because when we talk about energy transition, quoting from my friend from the power generation section, that there is no energy transition without transmission. But for us in oil and gas, there is no energy transition without green refineries. That's why we need...
it doesn't rhyme as well.
Yeah. Next month, we will have this groundbreaking of our green refinery, and also other programs, especially that the sources are the indigenous resources from Indonesia.
Oh, okay, but what you said is that sort of ESG was still important as a company.
Yes, yes.
And looking internationally, aligning the sort of opportunities of the transition, and because Indonesia does have a lot to offer, and it feels like being a pro-transition partner for other countries that need to transition is very good positioning for Indonesia. And is that consistent across SOEs, do you think? Do you think all SOEs are sort of aligned on that point?
Yes, exactly. Because I have to be frank, John, so for us, finally, the affordability is king, because we have to provide the affordable energy for our people. With the affordable energy, and we also support the economic growth. That's why all the SOEs now under Danantara, we have now Danantara now, the Sovereign Wealth Fund.
Yes.
And now is the shareholders, the majority of all the SOEs, and we are doing the streamlining, and also for the standard, international standard, the ESG, and etc. are going to be part of our daily operation. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, aligning that growth with sort of decarbonization, affordable decarbonization, where the economics make sense, that makes sense. And Pak Aziz, I suppose a similar question for private companies. How are private companies sort of aligned and coordinated on the transition, or do they take very different and independent strategies? What's your view? And maybe it's a sort of KADIN type question, but you know, what's your view on how aligned private companies are?
Oh, it's very aligned actually, right? Because as an Indonesian company, we are exploring on how to capitalize the Indonesia competitive comparative advantages. Right, we are collaborate with public sectors, we collaborate with SOEs, and we collaborate with many other sort of parties on how to capitalize it and to be more sustainable. Right, so the ESG things, right, the transition to a green, transition to more sustainable are ways to really make our businesses, our life more sustainable.
Okay, are there things that would help do that better? What do you think the needs are for that alignment?
Well, I guess this is, I think, coming back to the basic public-private partnership, right? Who, I think, in any endeavors, we will see different set of risks, different set of opportunities, and we have to be very open in terms of who is the best at taking a specific risk in any partnership, right? So collaboration and partnership on how to be more sustainable are I think a critical element of the partnership. Yeah.
Okay, so that's good connectivity across SOEs and the private sector is hugely important. And Papa, now I'll ask a question, I suppose, about financing and whether you feel like the finance community are also aligned and understand the sort of direction and sort of opportunities and constraints. I suppose you do some very big deals. You know, is finance easier or harder? What's your view?
Yeah, financing actually is tough, especially if you're talking about these transition energies, and then if you enter into renewable businesses, because it can be a deal breakers at the end. I mean, if the project is soundly viable and things, but at the end it's not, and from the ESG point of view is also that. But if the revenue and projected revenue and also the demand is unclear, basically you cannot have a financial close for that. And then talking about the support and in this, I think we need to have some incentive in terms of entering into this more greener energies. And this is something that the businesses will take a look, whether some support from the financial institutions, whether from the onshore or offshore, that want to take a look on this. Can be a blended finance or sustainable with the KPIs and things, but at the end is, I think the cash is there, but how to present and then also to join together to tap into that.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, we're seeing on a global basis people being, I suppose, more hesitant on ESG than before. Yeah. So maybe 2 or 3 years ago, big financial institutions making big commitments to how much they were going to invest. Some of that has fallen away a little bit on, and actually it's come down to, again, just financial viability. If a project's financially viable, it's investable. If valuing the sort of ESG attributes has become a little bit tougher the terminology has sort of fallen away a little bit, unfortunately, on a global basis. So again, it varies around the globe, but certainly sort of stateside particularly, that has happened. So anyway, that's that's why we have to keep an eye on the economics alone, because actually with economics, you can still have an economic transition. So we would still reduce global emissions by 2050 across the board, just with economics alone. So as long as we're economically honest, then we're sort of halfway there. It's whether we hit net zero soon enough. Okay, I'm going to ask one last question actually for everybody. What do you think? What's the one thing that would make life easier in terms of energy transition? So as a business, if you could make one request to government or the international community, let's say, what would be your one thing that would make the transition more easier and more accelerated?
Yeah, John. Energy transition, yes, we support this energy transition, but if I could suggest, we do this on stages, gradually, because a lot of benefit that we can have now. For example, when we have this mandated B40 for biodiesel, we started from B10, B20, 30, and etc. That's the way we are going to do it, bioethanol, and also for the sustainable efficient fuel. Because if we jump this energy transition and not having this fossil fuel, then there will be possibility of, we have no energy security. So energy transition, yes, but we will do in stages, because some of our assets still can be used. So there will be no issue of asset stranded if we jump to, implementing this 100% energy. So once again, energy transition, yes, but let's do this on stages and increasing as the years go.
Yes. That's great. That's a great answer, actually. It makes a lot of sense. Also because the technology and the costs of technology and tariffs and these kind of things keep changing. So the maths that go along with the transition evolves over time. So that it's true, you can't sort of set a path now that's fixed. You have to keep evaluating it and doing it stepwise. So fantastic. Pak Aziz, what's the one thing you would make life easier in terms of the energy transition for you?
I'll address this to the international financial community, right? To provide incentive and disincentive for the energy transition in terms of their balance sheet, in terms of their costing, in terms of their recognition of the capital, because if there's no incentive of doing so, the new things, quote unquote, the green the energy transition sectors, right, will face a headwind.
Right.
Because of the scale, because of the economic profitability, because of the early stage development, early stage risk, that sort of stuff. If international financial community stick to as if they are supporting the traditional sectors, it won't happen. It won't happen. So I think the corporate, the countries, whoever who are going for the energy transition must collaborate with the international financial community, and international financial community need to change also. It's not just the corporate in terms of how they provide incentive and disincentive for green and non-green sectors.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Actually, what we have seen is the sort of GFANs and some of the groups have sort of fallen back a little bit because the world is so different and different geographies are buying into sort of different narratives. But actually some financial institutions are very aligned to the energy transition. Actually for our business, it's sort of night and day. Some are very committed, and they're in geographies that are very pro-transition. Brazil, they're investing in a place like Brazil or whatever. And so interesting. Institution by institution, they seem very different. And there is definitely, I'd say, a handful of global financial institutions that are still more pro-transition than they were, kind of thing, and really do see it as a business opportunity. So maybe it's sort of courting those and having them come to, making sure that Indonesia is on their list of countries and they understand the commitment and the coordination that you all have. And maybe those, and we can chat later about one or two of them, but I feel like there's definitely financiers out there that really do see that opportunity. So thank you. Yep, we're final question, actually, Pat Bernard. Yes, from your perspective, what's if there was one thing that you think would really help and accelerate the energy transition, what would it be, please?
Yeah, I think in the energy transition, all of us want predictable demands, but we should not forget that at the end, regarding the energy transition, we should have some support in terms of clear policies also from the governments. Indonesia can have a lot of examples, like Pak Simon just explained now regarding the blending mandates. This blending mandates in biodiesel that already, I think, in the last more than 15 years, starting from B10 up until B40 today, and then maybe we'll entering ethanol. And definitely we look also regarding if the governments introduce this blending mandate for the SAF also. Because you see in the blending, in the biodiesel cases, it's like public and private partnership. Because the private sector is the one that supply the biodiesel, and Pertamina is actually the one that blending it. And then at the end, the one that have an access in terms of distribute, whether to the PSO and also to non-PSO. So I think these models is actually works if you want to apply for others. And this is how we can have a collaboration between the public-private partnership with the government support in terms of the policy. Because without the clear policy, I mean stable policy, if the policy keeps changing, it's also hard. Because energy business is not like we see as a short term, but this is a long term. Some of the contract actually beyond than 5 to 10 years, especially like renewable energies like green electricity and stuff. It's not talking about 5 years, it's talking about beyond 15 to 20 years. So you need some clarity and support also from that.
Great, consistent, clear, supporting policy. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for sharing those thoughts. I know some of those questions weren't written down, so I literally thought they were good questions. So thank you very much for answering those. Please join me in thanking the panel. Cheers. Just one quick picture.